Friends, welcome to another edition of Wild and True. Now, I thought about changing everything around a little bit, but you know, it just kind of rolls along like this. So, here's a word from a few of our sponsors. Gary Stevie at Three Heart Outfitters, your North Idaho Adventure headquarters. Cat Paw Bend, your source for seedlings and seeds for your own game paradise. Winchester Shot Shells, packing the punch for trophy longbeards. Mossy Oak Camo, hiding hunters in plain sight for over 30 years. And Federal Ammunition, the best over-the-counter ammo for big game, period. Well, I thought about, usually this is the time of the year that we start talking about feed sources and acorns and persimmons and everything like that. But I wanted to take a second and think about something else, and that's the art of recovering game. And over the years, I've seen quite a bit of different scenarios happen. I mean, you can imagine between running the hunting lodge and running the video camera and everything else. And the one thing about the camera is that allowed us to really, it allowed us an insight, especially to bow shot deer, that you didn't normally have. Because, as a general rule, if it was an iffy hunt, or the shot was iffy in any fashion, we would go back to the cabin, put the footage up on the monitor, and we could actually pretty well dissect the exact shot and know the path the arrow or the bullet took. There's an awful lot that happens between the time you decide to squeeze the trigger or turn that arrow loose, and a lot of times the deer make a motion, or he'll get a half a step on you or something, and it kind of changes around. But what I want to talk more about anything is that a lot of deer, and it seems like I find them the most during turkey season, as I'm kind of in woods that I'm not normally traveling through. A lot of deer are left in the field every year on shots that were pretty much pretty good shots. Now, by no means do I profess to be able to track a deer better than any other man. As a matter of fact, there's lots of times when a fresh set of eyes will do a lot of good. They can just see things that one particular individual can't. But I've always kind of been blessed about a feel about where the deer would go. Now sometimes that don't make any sense. I mean, I've seen deer shot really good that ended up. One in particular I'm thinking about was basically center punched with a 300 mag. I mean, you couldn't have shot it any better unless you'd have shot it to break it down right there. You couldn't have shot the deer any better, and it run a huge half circle and ended up dying 30 yards away from where the bullet impact took place. So there's really no telling what they might do and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of times I find a lot of people's deer, because that was my job for time, is to kind of decipher what went on and, as they would say, CSI the scene and then find the deer. And A deer can do a tremendous amount in a very short amount of time. I mean, if you can ever pick up on how far they're actually leaping sometimes, and then they mess around and catch a road bank or something like that, and they dive off a road bank, well, they can make 15 yards. That might be pushing it. Well, not really. They might can make 15 yards before they touch ground again, depending on how bad the slope is and everything like that. So that's a tremendous blank hole you got to just kind of fill up, especially when you get in them briar thickets and patches and down in this jungle that these swamp bottoms and everything that we call home now. And add a little water in there, jump in the creek or something like that, and you really have to pay attention to what's going on. So that brings about the very first thing that you'll see most really, really good hunters do is that the time right behind the shot is almost critical because you've got to listen. And by listening, in some parts of the country, you know, or anywhere that's got a little bit of up and down to it, and you get in the dry leaves and everything else, I can pretty well mark where the deer stops the first time just from what I hear and all that kind of stuff. And I shot a deer. I call these kind of hunts a flash hunt. I was coming from doing something else, and hey, we had a tract of land that was about 6-8 miles outside town. Had never really killed any good deer on it or anything like that, but just a pretty tract of land, had big old hardwood bottoms in it, and some planted pines in the little upland sites, and just never was. We consistently hunted it and consistently got people in there and out of there, and just never really took a decent deer off of it until I bumped along one day. And I was coming home, and I had about, I don't know, 10 minutes before dark or something like that. And so I pulled right off the road into this short little old woods road, and I messed around and kind of eased the door to the truck. Of course, it was right by a highway right there, and so the deer were already used to vehicles going back and forth and everything. I eased the door shut, and of course I did my typical thing. I had stuff scattered. Everybody tells everybody that I'm the slowest person in the whole world when it comes right to it, trying to get ready to go. But you know what they don't realize, a lot of times I'm hunting from the time I get out of the truck. When everything gets quiet, I'm already going. And so I was listening to the area kind of within my hearing right around through there, and I promise you I wasn't no 8 or 10 steps from the rig, and the road kind of went out just a little bit. Good quiet road. We had driven it a good bit, but it was a solid road, wasn't muddy or too bad. And that road bent around to the right a little bit, and so I was able to get that little bend right there. I was standing right there in the bend. I could still see the truck and all that, but it opened up that whole next stretch to me. And by that time I heard bird, and so I just stopped, and I didn't know if it was really what I thought it was, and I heard it again, bird. And it was that short grunt they often give when they just walking, just walking along. Bird, 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 and so I knew that I was only gonna have it was planting pines on one side of the road, planting pines on the other, and there was a little hardwood head about 10 yards out. The plant pines were on about 10 yards stretch on the right hand side of the road, and then it turned into hardwoods. And I was trying to get to the edge of them hardwoods, is where I had planned to just kind of spend the evening. And what was left of it, all 5 minutes, and everything, when I could hear that deer walking the edge of that hardwood hedge, coming up to the road up through there. And I told myself, I said, whatever happens is going to happen so fast, it's going to be just crazy. So I went on and took the rifle, and I didn't mount the rifle. I just put it up all the way up to my shoulder and kind of looked up over the scope and all. But I had it pointed enough up that way, and I wish I could say that I saw him and he walked out and stopped and looked at me, and I shot him, and it was one of them perfect scenarios, but it wasn't nothing like that. The minute the minute he got in that opening, he didn't even know more than seemed like he must have picked me up at the corner of his eye or something. I don't know what happened, but I'd already swung to the middle of his body, and he wasn't 25 yards, and so it all happened so fast. He stuck his head in the hole. I swung the gun back, and I squeezed the trigger all at the same time, and I could tell when the bullet hit him. I mean, I know a lot of people don't believe this, but I shot tons and tons. If it was really known how many white-tailed deer I done seen or heard or been involved in the killing of, it would be amazing. But I heard that bullet when it hit, and even at that distance. But now, I shoot a bullet that's a factory load, and we've talked about bullets before. It's a factory load, and it's something about the gun and the load and the length of the barrel and everything that just works. Every time you hit one, he's got a definite problem. It ain't like a slight problem or nothing like that. It sounds like you threw a bag of concrete off top of a building. And so it whopped him pretty good, and I said, well, I got a pretty good lick on him. I knew I was in the body cavity, and so he turned, and I listened to him, and he run down through the holler, and then he run about halfway up the other side of the holler. And there really wasn't no big crashing of limbs and all, which in hardwood timber, I generally associate with that being the deer a lot of times. But I didn't hear that, and so I eased on up there to where he was standing, and I knew I had that much room, and then I kind of eased around, and I went on around the end of the little old finger of pines instead of go through the pines, and I kind of eased out, and I picked up first blood where he had come out, in that hardwood, and it was already getting pretty hard to see and all, and but I could see it good enough that I thought I could trail it, and so I didn't stop and dig around for a light or anything like that, and so I trailed him, I don't know, off in that first little hollow about 30-35 yards, and I heard him when he got up in front of me. And so he got up in front of me, and it's hard to say how far away he was. He's 50-75 yards, maybe 50 yards, I don't know. And I heard him stop again, and when you stop,